Greetings, you're listening to Dr. Ikana Ezealah. Today, I wish to discuss the question, can transformation in Africa happen without a corresponding social upheaval? The answer is no. To illustrate my point, I will use the biblical story of Moses and the Israelites. You see, the current condition of Africa came into being through different upheavals. And consequently, if you look at the current condition in many countries, the institutions that are meant to provide recourse are all captured. We talk about democracy, but the democratic solution assumes that your institutions are fair enough to uphold justice. Let's take an example in Nigeria. The executive, we understand the political process of even electing, or shall we say, selecting leaders is corrupted. So someone who transparently goes through the process without bribing or doing anything of a corrupt nature has almost a 0% chance of emerging through it. That's one. Then you have the legislature, who are also bought and paid for. In Nigeria, the National Assembly, we understand a rubber stamp for a few coins, they will betray and sell out the interests. They don't even really work for the interests of the Nigerian people. Then you have the security service, which acts as a private police force for the elites. And then you have the judiciary, which of course bought and paid for to deliver judgments mostly. And then added to that, you then have the Electoral Commission, who of course appointed by the president. So the question arises, if security, judiciary, legislature, executive, the electoral, it's all corrupted, how is it possible that an African person today with an objective capacity for reasoning will believe that through normal democratic processes, the transformation needed in Africa can take place? Bearing this in mind, let us now look at the story of Moses. In Africa today, it is very clear that it is through leadership that's the right impetus for collective transformation can come into being. Because the right leader with the right approach would have the right vision and set the right culture and attract the right people that would then enable this nation building towards the bright African future. So consequently, the appointment of the correct leader is really the important starting point of transformation in Africa. So with that in mind, the Israelites were enslaved by Egypt. And in order to help them, it became clear that you could not just give them succor while they're in bondage, but it was necessary for them to have a new leader follow the Almighty. The first step was the appointment of new leadership over the Israelites. And since Pharaoh held them in captivity, then he appointed Moses. Now, the first step was to give Pharaoh an opportunity to voluntarily relinquish leadership over the Israelites. When Pharaoh refused, the Lord didn't just negotiate and say, okay, I will send help to keep the Israelites where they are, and we'll just do foreign direct investments in their quarters. No. From then on, the plagues were released. Now, what was the point of the plagues? The plagues was an upheaval that was meant to enforce the necessary change of leadership, whether Pharaoh liked it or not. Now, it took 7 plagues, 7 vials of wrath, each with progressive levels of intensity. And each time, Pharaoh promised that when the plague subsided, he reneged. That represents the entrenched interests in African society in the different levers and instrumentalities of governance that will never voluntarily relinquish control of their own accord. And even if you were to mobilize and do everything, they would be tenacious in trying to regain that control. That's domestically. Now, if you factor in the international and continental, then you see what Africans who wish to transform society are up against. Which means that even if you strive for the good to bring about transformation through upheavals, those who have an entrenched interest that representing that Pharaoh mentality will constantly come after you. If you then think about it, 1 plague, 2 plague, 3, all the way to 7. And even after the 7th, when the Israelites were then freed and they were walking and they approached the Red Sea, even then, Pharaoh still came after them. And it took this miracle of parting the Red Sea for the Israelites crossing, and then Pharaoh's army pursuing them. Then, of course, the Red Sea closing and drowning Pharaoh. It took 7 plagues and the drowning of Pharaoh's army for the Israelites to then be released from that bondage. And this was 3,000 plus years ago. If humanity on earth has gotten worse spiritually, and yet through technological advancements have gotten more arrogant, if people are so entrenched in power in Africa, domestically, continentally, internationally, all these influences, then how can an African believe that only through some ballot process, without any type of dislocation, that change can actually come about? Real change, transformation. So when you look at it, you'll understand that in your heart and mind, should be a desire for peace, a desire to do everything fairly and transparently with firm volition for the good. But if you step forward and want to transform and you are not ready for the sacrifice that is required, because Moses stepped forward understanding that anything can happen. He was jailed, he was beaten. It took coordination of efforts. It took not only physical power, but spiritual powers for that change to come about. So understanding that anyone who wishes to participate has to have the understanding that you have to be willing to go all 12 rounds. You cannot say, I want to start on this with a guarantee that I make it through to my old age. If you're striving for leadership and you have that desire, or you say, I want it guaranteed, I can benefit from the fruits of my efforts and live to old age, then you need to just step away, go back home. Because what is required needs full commitment and seeing it through to the very end. I paint this picture not inviting or desiring upheaval, but saying that it is, when you objectively assess it, the conditions in Africa, an unavoidable necessity and struggle to safeguard, to defend, and to ensure the progress of Africa, because every institution has to be liberated. And it cannot be liberated except through concerted effort, coordination of volition and action, and a constant and vigilant protecting. This is the condition in which we find ourselves in Africa. We have to learn from the past. We have to see what the forebears, the Pan-Africanists in the past did right, what they did wrong, where they had errors, and we have to learn from it. We are in a much better position than our forebears did. We have education, we have a global outlook, we have technology, we have all types of expertise across all sectors on earth. We are endowed more than any generation has ever been. And yet, in our actions, we can be said to be the most lacking because we're either striving for comfort or we're too comfortable. So understanding that, all the forebears, or a lot of the forebears we look up to, they came abroad, they learned, and they went back. They participated in the struggle to liberate their countries from foreign forces. Now, our struggle is to liberate our countries from domestic entrenched interests. Otherwise, what's the point of our life? Is it to just romance and have kids and enjoy? Is that it? Frivolities going out? Is that the climax of our life? Or is it to participate in establishing the foundation for positive future development? And so we look forward, understanding our responsibility to add to the progress that others have started. What will succeeding generations say of us? The question, what foundation did you build? What did you add? And what will be our response? It is necessary that we take ownership and we understand the forces that are at play and the struggle that is required. We do not strive to be martyrs, no. But we understand that if we are serious about the cause of African progress, then we have to be willing to go all in. So the question is, who deep within their inner beings see Africa as a responsibility so personal that they in their inner beings wish to go all in? That is the question each must answer before themselves and before the Almighty. For we're here on earth for a purpose, and we have a responsibility. Understanding the landscape, I return to the question that I asked, which is, can Africa be transformed and changed without a corresponding social upheaval? When entrenched interests are too comfortable, we understand the answer is no, and we've drawn lessons and principles from the story of Moses. And the most important thing from that story of Moses is that it just didn't happen through the volition of Moses alone. It happened because he was deeply in his inner being connected to the guidance of God. And it is through that connection and his confidence in the omnipotence of God that he was then connected to helps that manifested as the plagues to liberate the Israelites. So this means for effective transformation, if you strive to do it by yourself alone, you're going to fail. But it takes connection to the divine and confidence in the omnipotence and the help of Almighty God. And when there's unity in that intensity of a volition, only then can the creative forces of heaven be released to coordinate with efforts on ground of those who are earnest in their volition to manifest in the final outcome of unconditional victory. This is the path that we see. These are the principles that we understand. And now to each his personal decision of the course they must take and the action that must follow. And in this, I wish everyone well. Onward and upward.